Greetings, everyone, and welcome to our new Chartres Academy community call this February. And we're very much looking forward to our time together in Chartres and all of the preparations that are being made for Musica. And as our beginning, I'd like to invite Apila to give us an invocation.
Thank you, Karen. Good morning. This morning I have, or if you can see, I'm burning cedar from Chartres 2009. And I'm doing that for a reason, because in Indigenous days at Chartres, 9 was the sacred number of worlds between the dimensions, the upper, the lower, the inner, the outer. And this, as I light this, it's the fusion and the communication flowing between the worlds. We give thanks this day for the sacred gift of life, for the gift of technology that allows us to come together, for the circle that's the Chartres community, for the gift of sound and vibration manifest into life, the spoken word, the sacred geometry, the mysteries of the 7 liberal arts at Chartres, the ceremonies and the rituals given to us by way of the Wisdom School, Ubiquity University, Jim Garrison, the faculty, the administration, and each of you in this circle, doing your work in your life in a way that enlivens the power and the beauty and the peace and the mystery embodied in the cathedral and the ways of relating to that cathedral through all time. For these gifts and more, we give thanks.
Thank you, Apila. We are very grateful for the multitude of gifts that we receive and for the community that we have in Chartres. And today on our call, we're going to hear some updates from Jim. And also, I'm going to be giving a talk about the sun and the metaphysics of music. And there'll be time for a conversation and discussion at the end. And I think what I'd like to do is just invite Jim right now to share your comments and any updates that you have for us.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Apila. I always just love your invocations. They're so soothing and immediately take me back to the cathedral and the Maison Saint-Yves and all our time together. So thank you so much for calling in this sacred space month after month. And I want to welcome, I know Gary Malcolm is on the call, and Andrew Harvey, and probably a number of the other faculty. I want to welcome them and thank you all for joining us today. The one thread that I want to just bring to our collective attention is the link that we're developing this year between Chartres and Damanhur. Over the last several weeks, we've been having a number of phone calls that have included Esperidae and Will Tagle, the dean of the Wisdom School, and Wendy Grace and Teresa Collins and others at Hawks Hill, and the whole group that has been really incubating over many, many years now the relationship between Damanhur and that very powerful spiritual community in northern Italy and the Wisdom School. And the connection is really coming into a particular both frequency and I would say intensity that is going to be very powerful, which is the reason why I wanted to raise it today, Karen, because on the solstice in June 21st, when the sun is at its highest point in the sky and the day is the longest, we're going to be having our graduation. We're going to be awarding Esperidae Ananas from Damanhur, an honorary PhD. And there's going to be some very special ceremonies at Hawks Hill in the Santa Cruz Mountains to really both consecrate the connection that has been developing now for some years between Damanhur and the Wisdom School. And then in Chartres, Will and his wife, Judith Yost, will be joining us. And then there's going to be a group that will be going from Chartres to Damanhur on the Saturday when we close out on the 9th of July. And I just wanted to note this, both to invite any of you who would be intrigued by the connection between Chartres and Damanhur to consider coming to both these pilgrimages. And also to say that part of what Will and Judith and Esperidae, if she can join us, and possibly Wendy and Teresa, there will be a certain very specific tonality that is around, the ecological matrix, and I would say the shamanic matrix that has been so powerfully present through Will and Judith in the Wisdom School, has been very, very deeply explored by the Damanhurians, both in terms of their creation of the temple of humankind actually in the mountain there in Damanhur, as well as the very deep exploration of the music of the spheres in terms of the trees and the larger eco field. So as we're preparing ourselves for Chartres this year and Musica, there will be a lot of different levels that we will be exploring. Gary and Ruth will have a very beautiful a gift to bring. Karen, who will be co-teaching with them, will be bringing a gift. And I just wanted people to sort of also understand that Will and Judith will be there, and a group that will have been meeting previously through the full moon meditations and the deeper collaboration between the Wisdom School and Damanhur. So that impulse will be coming into our midst and both deepening and broadening our consecration of Musica together. And then for some of us who will be doing Chartres then Damanhur, there will be another group that will be going on to Tibet, to Mount Kailash, considered the axis mundi of the world by the Buddhist and Hindu and Chinese and Southeast Asian traditions. So what we're developing this year could not be richer and could not be more sublime. And so Karen, I'll turn it over to you, but I'm very excited, everyone, at the possibilities that are slowly incubating in our midst and will come to fruition around the solstice, and then going into Chartres, Damanhur, and eventually Kailash in August. So Karen, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And that's quite a bit to look forward to between Damanhur and Mount Kailash, with Chartres sandwiched in the middle. It's quite an adventure that's coming. So one of the things I'd like to share with everyone is that actually a few months ago, it was in November, Apila and I were talking and had the idea that it might be of interest to many of the students who are coming to Chartres to do inner preparation for our time together, more on a soul and spiritual level, as well as the readings that are assigned as intellectual preparation. And so today, Apila is going to share a picture of what might be possible, what it is that we were really discussing, and see if there are people interested, that there are spiritual practices or meditations that will be available if anyone is interested in doing that inner work in preparation for the initiations that we will be experiencing there. So, Apila.
Yes.
Would you please share with us? Yes.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Preparing for Chartres. It's the most unexpected and profound gift in my life. I have many ceremonies, Native American ceremonies that I participate in, and Indigenous ceremonies around the world. When I think about Chartres, I remember my resistance to being involved with it to begin with, because I didn't want to be involved with what I thought was such a Christian site and with the labyrinth. And then, and can you hear me, Karen?
Yes.
Okay. And then when I went to Chartres, I discovered that what I encountered were my erroneous assumptions, my own darkness, my own judgments, and experienced the ecstatic joy of being in a place where my Indigenous self and my Western self came together. And I specifically found it walking the labyrinth, being in the crypt, things that we do. When I came away from Chartres, after 7 years, the first 7 years, I was really at a loss, because at that time it wasn't clear if we would go for another 7 years. When I returned to Maui, where I live, I had decided that Sunday that I would go to Mass. So because we had been away in France, I looked up the schedule, and lo and behold, on the church schedule, even though I have gone in and out of this church for 25 years, I discovered there was a labyrinth on site. So I went to this little labyrinth with absolute joy, because it represented a continuity for me. If Chartres was not going to go forward, if we weren't going to have more mystery schools, New Chartres Academy meetings there, then I reckoned that the Creator had given me this beautiful, beautiful gift of this like 1/2 size labyrinth, 1 block from my house, and for 25 years did not know it was there. So the inner and the outer world, as we go to Chartres, even as we elect to participate in these phone calls, what I've noticed over the years is things begin to happen. There is a communication set in motion between ourselves and the spirits, the angels, Christ, God, whatever, however we understand that meta reality that we move through, that moves through us. And when this communication happens, sometimes I find I'm aware of it, and sometimes I'm not so aware of it. So when I'm coming away from Chartres 2, 3, 4 months later, what I find is a longing for the community, and a longing for just the feeling of approaching that cathedral. You come from by car or by train, look out the window, and there, after all the journeying across the continent, across the waters, you look out the window, and there's that little tiny church spire showing up on the horizon. Ah, absolute joy. And then walking into the cathedral, first the darkness, and you can't even see where, you can't see your hand in front of yourself, and then opening to just this glorious, spectacular, jewel tone stained glass windows just sparkling and twinkling in the darkness of the cathedral, and just breathtaking. So I wondered, coming away from there, always imbued with this sense of the sacred, how can I maintain this what is it that I can do? As we were preparing for this call, Karen and myself, I was thinking, what could I possibly say about preparing for Chartres and for the initiation? What is it that the ancestors, in my understanding, my native spiritual understanding, the ancestors or the angels, what is it that they would like to have said? So as I was thinking about it, nothing much was coming. And then I got a text message, and it was from two people, one a student at Wisdom and one on the board, which is Steve and Gail Lloyd. And they said they were on Maui and they would drop by to see me. And then I said, well, why don't we go walk over to the labyrinth together? So we did. And as we walked down the labyrinth, we were ready to walk, I asked them, there's going to be a call tomorrow, the Chartres community call. And I have the opportunity to share something about preparation for visiting Chartres. Would you join me in this? So last night, over here, all the way in the Hawaiian Islands, 3 Chartres participants walked our little labyrinth. And as we came off of the labyrinth, 2 things struck me. One, the turns, or as Karen would say, the lunations. The lunations on the labyrinth, the turns. This is where we're at right now on this call, the turn, and aware that we're in the turn. How should we take this turn? Do we take it slowly, quickly? One year, Jim and I both had an experience on the labyrinth of almost a vertigo on taking the turns. It matters. It matters how we take that turn. And it also matters that we notice how we take the turn. With that in mind, Karen and I had spoken earlier about the possibility of setting up some additional calls for us to prepare, to share meditations with each other. And then there's the possibility of actually small groups of us coming together between now and Chartres, where we're not too far apart, and perhaps visiting one of the labyrinth sites. One of Karen's ceremonial team workers, Linda Delman, has a beautiful Chartres right outside of the Bay Area. And it might be possible to do something like that, visit that before we go to Chartres. The other thing is, Dawn Kirk and I set up a Facebook page for people to record their dreams, the synchronicities that show up following Chartres work. And we might also use that Facebook page. What I would invite people to do is visit the Facebook page and share now, as we get ready to go into 2016 Chartres and Musica, in the turn, as we're preparing now, as we have past winter solstice coming towards spring solstice. And you know, in the ancient days, the Carnot tribal people, the Gaul tribal people of France, had an image of a black Madonna that would always be found near a well. Even today, they're discovering new black Madonnas by ancient springs in the southern part of France. It's said that the Carnot tribal people brought the Black Madonna, or the Black Earth Mother, down into the cave, and then and with seasonal changes brought her out. And that this helped the cycle of growth and regeneration, death, birth, death, birth. So in this lunation, facing death and birth and renewal, then one of the ways we might become conscious in that is sharing the Facebook page and paying attention to the dreams and the synchronicities, because as we engage in this communication with the living universe, synchronicities and dreams show up, and they're a flag, an alert. We're engaged. So if that appeals to you, that's available right now. And I'll be checking it every week to see if there's something that I can add to the conversation, and I'll ask Karen to do that with me. So as you prepare yourself for the great gift of even being in these calls with each other. The invitation, the initiation is the appreciation, the love and the gratitude and the growing consciousness that we can contribute to the process we're engaged in, to the conversation. So I think that's about all I have to say. And I hope that you will also use that site if you have suggestions about how we might prepare, and your prayers. Let's engage with each other. And Karen and I are going to be talking with each other and contemplating on what you say to respond to you, and see how we can together create a beautiful initiatic experience so that Chartres can become more and more an all-day, everyday experience of life for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Apila. Thank you very much. That was a beautiful expression of what we're holding as a vision. And I very much appreciate what you've offered us here. So thank you. And may it flourish both inwardly and outwardly. Yes. Now we're going to turn to a conversation about the sun and the metaphysics of music. And as we have been seeking to penetrate the mysteries of the 7 liberal arts, we have considered as one aspect their correspondence with the 7 classical planets in our solar system. With Grammatica, we explored the moon and its relationship. With Dialectica, Mercury. With Rhetorica, Venus. And now this year, as we are immersing ourselves in Musica, we are exploring the correspondence between music and the sun. And I'm going to give a brief introduction to the sun today. And when we're gathered in Chartres, we'll go into much greater depth with this inquiry. And we will also taste the metaphysical dimension of music today, the cosmic order that shapes the music of the spheres and inspires the music that we have in our lives. So the question that I offer here at the beginning of this conversation for our contemplation is, what is the true relationship between the sun and music? So I'd like to begin by exploring our physical sun. And I'm only going to share very few aspects of this, but those that I feel are very engaging and important for us to hold in consciousness. And one is that our sun is one of more than 100 billion stars in our galaxy. And it's an average size star. It's one of more than 100 billion stars. The sun is at present about 70% hydrogen and 28% helium by mass, and everything else, which primarily are metals, amount to less than 2%. And these percentages change slowly over time as the sun converts hydrogen to helium in its core. So we could say it's close to 0.75% hydrogen and close to 1/4% helium. The sun's power is about 386 billion megawatts. And this is produced by nuclear fusion, and each second, about 700 billion tons of hydrogen are converted to about 695 billion tons of helium and 5 billion tons of energy in the form of gamma rays. So we have to consider this. Every second, 700 billion tons of hydrogen are changed into helium. So our sun is metamorphosing continuously. And as the energy travels out toward the surface of the sun, it's continuously absorbed and re-emitted at lower and lower temperatures, so that by the time it reaches the surface, it's primarily visible light. The heat and energy is converted into light. Now, we've also heard that it's converted into tone, or the sun has a tone, and you can actually hear a recording on YouTube of vibratory tones emanating from the sun. So we also have to understand that the sun has a magnetic field that by terrestrial standards is very strong, and it extends well beyond Pluto. So we know that the Earth has a certain gravitational pull, and that once we get a certain distance up into the air, it no longer exists. The astronauts float when they're out farther beyond our atmosphere. And the sun has a magnetic field that extends all the way out to Pluto and holds all of our planets and asteroids and various other objects in the heavens in order, in its field. So the last bit that I would like to say about the sun per se, our sun, our precious sun that sustains our life, brings us warmth and joy and the beauty of nature and so many other things, healing forces. It's about, according to scientists, 4.5 billion years old. And since its birth, it's used up about half of the hydrogen in its core. And it will continue to radiate peacefully for another approximately 5 billion years or so, although its luminosity will approximately double in that time, just due to the transformation of hydrogen. But eventually, it will run out of hydrogen, and it will then be forced into what we would consider radical changes that are commonplace by stellar standards, will result in the destruction of the Earth and probably the creation of a planetary nebula. And if we look at esoteric science, this has already occurred in at least 3 times in our solar system, and that what we see as the planet Saturn is the residue that's left over from a prior system, a life-providing place of existence that went through a destruction and is now the remnants are what we see as Saturn. And at a later time in history, the same is true of Jupiter, that what we see as the planet Jupiter is the remnants of what once was a very different form. And the moon as well is believed that it was a part of our planet Earth, and at a certain point extruded out and became a satellite to the Earth. And that, what's described is that if it hadn't, the hardness of it would have brought the whole life cycle on the Earth to death. So we can say that in the future, and what scientists project as 5 billion years from now, there will be a radical transformation and life on this planet will no longer exist. But the esotericists say, well, but we will continue to exist, that our souls are eternal, and we will live in another sphere, which is often referred to as future Jupiter. So this is a bit of a picture about our physical sun. And now I'd like to say a little bit about the metaphysical sun, because in metaphysics, what we see as our physical sun is regarded as only a reflection of a central spiritual sun, which is a dwelling or a vehicle for a god or a host of gods, for great spiritual beings. And that what we see then as our physical sun is a reflection. It isn't the true essence of the solar essence, and what the ancients referred to as the sun god. We'll go into mythology in depth when we're in Chartres together, but there are many gods who are honored, and some as the great creator source, the sun god, and they are representatives of the metaphysical sun that is represented by our physical sun. So in the Timaeus, Plato refers to the transmundane sun, and he describes our sun as a miniature copy of this transmundane, or he also refers to it as the supra-celestial sun. And this is also called by some the central sun. And according to esoteric teachings, the supra-celestial sun is the divine center, pouring out love to all the suns, all the stars in the heavens. And this is what Aristotle referred to as the prime mover. And the prime mover at the heart of all existence. And everything in our galaxy is moving around this great center. Now, I just want to stop for a second, reflecting back to the initial question that I put about the relationship between sun and music. We know that everything is created through sound, that it's vibration that's at the heart of creation. And vibration is sound, tone. And the prime mover is sound. And it's a frequency, we could say, or a sequence of frequencies, an array of frequencies emanating love. And so this is something for us to hold in contemplation when we're exploring the actual sun and its vibratory capacity and its relationship to music. So if one imagines for a moment our sun holding the 9 planets and countless asteroids in their orbits, we have a sense of the power of our sun, as I said earlier. And if we think of the central sun at our galactic center, the scope of its power holds at least 100 billion suns, not including planets, in their orbits around it, including our sun. So if for me, it's almost incomprehensible to try and imagine the vast power of this. And according to modern astronomy, they postulate that there's the existence of a supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy, and that this energy is whirling and sucking everything down. And I've actually seen photos and seen National Geographic maps of the galaxy, and what's depicted there is this luminous, radiant center to the galaxy that's raying out with these beautiful spiral arms of stars. And we have our little solar system on one of the arms of our galaxy. And so if we think of this central sun as a true sun, or the transmundane sun that Plato talked about, then its power is so far superior to the power of our sun. And the tone, the music that would be coming from this center is, it's incomprehensible what it is, but we have inclinations of it that we'll be touching on in a moment. Now, the theosophical teachings, they not only mention our physical sun, which, known by science, but they postulate that there are 7 suns, which are the central bodies of the 7 systems of planes of being. So this is something quite interesting, that to consider that there are 7 suns, and that we know from Pythagoras's definition or discovery of an octave that there are 7 primary tones, diatonic tones in a scale. So what are these 7 planes of existence and the 7 suns that relate to this? So in Theosophy, the first, I'll just run through these quickly, and this is something we can take up in more depth when we're together. The first is the physical body, that this is one of the planes of existence. And the second is our astral body, our feeling life, our soul life. The third is prana, which is our vital life, our etheric forces, chi in the Chinese medical system. The fourth is kama-rupa, which is our desire body. It's all of our passions and desires. The fifth is referred to as manas, which is actually a Hindu term and is considered ordinary mind, but manas is actually the purification of the astral body, which was the second plane of existence that I mentioned. And then they have higher manas, which is the inner spiritual higher ego. So we have, so let's say the higher ego is the purification of the astral body over the lower manas, which is the ordinary mind. And then the sixth, we have buddhi, which is called by the Theosophists the spiritual soul, but it's also the pure universal spirit. It's the purification of our chi, our prana, our etheric body, our vitality, our life force. In other words, when that's completely purified, we won't become ill. We will live with vitality that will be able to support our physical existence. And the seventh is Atma, which, in Hinduism is the highest state of existence, consciousness, and it is the absolute, or when we are at one with our divine essence. In Christianity, this is referred to as the resurrection body. This is the state of being capable of spiritualizing matter or materializing spirit, so that we can be in a physical state and at will we can, so to speak, disappear. We can spiritualize ourselves. And if we are in a spiritual form, we can at will materialize and become present in a material body to communicate with others. So that is the seventh state of being. And these 7 states have a relationship to our 7 chakras. And each of these, I'll just say now, has a relationship to a particular vibratory frequency or tone. And also in the Greek musical system and in the medieval musical system, they have a relationship to a mode. There were particular modes that particularly activated or harmonized these planes of existence. So this is all referring to what we could call the concealed sun, or the concealed 7 suns, rather than the physical sun that we see with our eyes. And the real substance of the concealed sun is what we would call a nucleus of mother substance, the divine mother substance. That is what the ancients worshipped and what is coming back into consciousness for those people who have forgotten her. And it's the heart and the matrix of all living and existing forces in our solar universe, this mother substance. And that is the essence of the concealed sun. And it's the kernel from which proceed the cyclic journeys of all powers, the seasons, the cycle of a day, the cycle of the month. This is all emanating from this mother substance, which is the substance of the concealed sun. And powers are set in action. The atoms and their functions and duties are all set forth through this power. And I'm hoping you'll keep echoing in the back of your mind, what does this have to do with music now, these planes of existence, and the work of this concealed sun? Now, the work of the mother substance and the work of the sun is a septenary nature, sevenfold nature. And that's why the sun is spoken of by the ancients as one who is driven by 7 horses, equal to the meters of the Vedas. So the ancients had a chariot. And when we speak of Apollo in Greek mythology and how he drove the chariot of the sun across the sky daily, he had 7 horses to his chariot. So this is the image we can see of the backdrop of the 7 suns. Now, the sun is also identified with 7 in the Gayana, the classes of being, or the orb. And this is part of the system of 7 rays, and is, what is in contemporary theosophical circles. So the 7 beings in the sun are also considered the 7 holy ones. And they are self-born. And they are from an inherent power in the matrix of the mother substance. And it's they who send forth the 7 principal forces that are called the rays, the 7 rays, which are at the beginning of what's called a pralaya, or a quiet period of inactivity before a new stage of evolution takes place. And they will center into 7 new suns for the next Manvantara. So that's a whole age of being, a Manvantara in Hinduism. And the energy from which they spring into consciousness is in every sun. And it's what some people call Vishnu, which is the breath of absoluteness. Now, an interesting thing to consider is that the central sun, which science also are obliged to accept now astronomically because it can't deny the pressure in sidereal space of some central body in the Milky Way. And it's a point unseen and mysterious, and it's ever hidden in the center of attraction of our sun. But this sun is viewed differently by different occultists in the East and in the West. And this is quite interesting. In the West, and Jewish Kabbalists, and even some modern astronomers claim that the sun, the Godhead, is especially present, referring to the volitional acts of God in the central sun. That is the place, the residing place of the force of creation. In the East, the initiates maintain that the super divine essence of the unknown absolute is equally in every domain and place. That the central sun is simply the center of universal life force for the reservoir within which the divine is radiating. And it's already differentiated at the beginning of every creation. And so this life force of the central sun is in every aspect of creation. And though still in a neutral condition, it is always the attracting one and the ever-emitting life center. So these are different perspectives on the central sun and its essence. And I personally happen to believe that both are true, that there is a source of creation outside of us and also a source of creation within every living being. Now, I'd like to turn for a few minutes now to various aspects of music. And it's probable that the Greek initiates gained their knowledge of the philosophic and therapeutic aspects of music from the Egyptians. And they, in turn, considered Hermes the founder of the art of music. And according to one legend, Hermes, and we'll go into this in greater depth, I'd hoped to be able to tell this whole story today, but I couldn't do everything, so I decided to put that off until we're together. But Hermes constructed the first lyre by stretching 7 strings across the concavity of a turtle shell. He was newly born, and he saw this turtle climbing about, and he took hold of it and took it apart, took its shell, and created strings on it, and he had antlers going up from the shell as the support frame for the strings to come down and a bar across the top. And Plato, in describing the antiquity of these arts among the Egyptians, he declared that the songs and poetry 10,000 years, and that these were of such an exalted and inspiring nature that only gods or godlike humans could have composed them. And in the mysteries of the lyre, with its 7 strings, it was regarded as the secret symbol of the human constitution. So here's a musical instrument that was regarded as the secret symbol of the constitution of the human being. The body of the instrument representing the physical form. The strings represented the nerves, and the musician who played the lyre was the spirit. And playing upon the nerves, the spirit thus created the harmonies of normal functioning, which, however, could become discords if the nature of the human playing it was defiled. And this then gets into the Pythagorean picture of the essence of music and how it can be used. So early Chinese, Hindus, Persians, Egyptians, Israelites, Greeks, they employed both vocal and instrumental music in their religious ceremonies. And they also would complement music with poetry and drama. But Pythagoras raised the whole notion of the art of music to a higher level of consciousness by demonstrating that it had a mathematical foundation, that the whole of music, from the Pythagorean point of view, is a manifestation of arithmetic ratios, that it's all based on number, and that number is at the source of the structure and architecture of the whole of creation. And we know with the Fibonacci series and various things that we've studied, we can see this in nature. And so Pythagoras brought this forward in relation to music. And he is generally credited with the discovery of the diatonic scale, which is, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. But he first learned the divine theory of music from priests of the various mystery centers into which he had been initiated. And he pondered for several years upon the laws governing consonance and dissonance. And to Pythagoras, music was one of the dependencies of the divine science of mathematics, and its harmonies were inflexibly controlled by mathematical proportions. And we'll study something about this when we're together and see how Pythagorean theory of music has been implemented in the whole Western music genre and was broken away from in modern music, and what effect that has had on the soul of the human being and on civilization and the unfolding of culture in our contemporary world. And we'll have a look at that and see where these laws of Pythagoras we feel are lawful or truthful, and how they apply to what we're experiencing now. So Pythagoras gradually initiated his disciples into what was his supreme arcanum of the mysteries. And this had to do with music. He divided the multitudinous parts of creation into a vast number of planes or spheres, to each of which he identified a tone, a harmonic interval, a number, a name, a color, and a form. And then he proceeded to prove the accuracy of his deductions by demonstrating them upon different planes of intelligence and substance, ranging from the most abstract logical premise to the most concrete geometrical solid. And from this, from these diversified methods of proof, he established what was considered an indisputable existence of certain laws of nature. And having once established music as an exact science, Pythagoras applied this newly found law of harmonic intervals to all the phenomena of nature, even going so far as to demonstrate the harmonic relationship of the planets, the constellations, and the elements to each other. And a notable example, and this was really shocking to me when I discovered this, of modern collaboration with ancient philosophical thought was reached in the progression of the elements in the periodic table of chemistry according to harmonic ratios. So John A. Newlands, who is a chemist, while making a list of the elements in the ascending order of their atomic weights, discovered that at every eighth element, a distinct repetition of properties occurred. This is now known in modern chemistry as the law of octaves. So in the musical scale, the diatonic scale, we have 7 notes and then the octave. So we can say A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 7 notes, and then we have A again. We repeat, and that's the octave. And what Newlands discovered is that all the way through the periodic table, every time you come to the 8th element, that there's a repetition that occurs. And so chemistry is resonating with Pythagoras' theory. Pythagoras declared that the soul could be purified from its irrational influences by solemn songs sung to the accompaniment of the lyre. And in his investigation of therapeutic value of harmonics, he discovered that the 7 modes, or the 7 keys of the Greek system of music, had the power to either incite or allay various emotions. And this was then re-established with the medieval modes that were used in Chartres. And I'm very interested in going into the medieval modes when we're together in Chartres and exploring how they sound and the effects they had on the inner life of people. So we know that Pythagoras cured many ailments, both spiritual soul ailments and physical bodily ailments. And he wrote various compositions and played them in the presence of the person who was suffering. And he would also recite short passages of poetry from Hesiod or Homer to heal people. And in his university, it was customary for the Pythagoreans to open and close each day with songs. Those in the morning calculated to clear the mind from sleep and to inspire it to the activities of the coming day. And those in the evening of a mode that was soothing and relaxing and conducive to preparing one to enter into sleep, which then is a journey into the spiritual world. So the therapeutic music of Pythagoras was described by Iamblichus, and it's what he said, I think, is worth quoting. So this is a quote from him. And there are certain melodies devised as remedies against the passions of the soul and also against despondency and lamentation, which Pythagoras invented as things that afford the greatest assistance in these maladies. And again, he employed other melodies against rage and anger and against even aberration of the soul. There is also another kind of modulation invented as a remedy against desires. So it's possible that the Pythagoreans recognized this very direct connection between the 7 Greek modes and the planets. And so I think what I will do, even though I wanted to say, I'll take another 2 minutes here or so. So in Apila's dream work, you've been working with a monochord, and there hasn't been one present every single year, but many years there has. And I'm hoping there will be one with us this coming year, because it was through the monochord that Pythagoras came to understand the arithmetic relationship of the intervals by hearing the tone of a string and dividing it in half, and hearing the octave and dividing it again, and hearing the fifth of the scale. And we'll go over this in detail together when we're in Chartres. But this monochord has certain proportions, and it's just taking a string and tightening it so that it makes a tone, and then whatever the pitch is, you have a mathematical relationship to finding the octave and the various tones of the scale. And he realized that counting inward from the circumference of the heavens, that you could divide the universe into 9 parts. And according to others, you could divide it into 12 parts, but Pythagoras worked with 9 parts. And the 12-fold system was, the first division was the Imperium, and this, which is considered also the sphere of the fixed stars, where the zodiac and the fixed stars are. And there was the dwelling place of immortals. And the second to the 12th divisions were the spheres of Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, and Moon. So the 7 classical planets, which I mentioned earlier, and then the 4 elements of fire, air, water, and earth. And this arrangement of the 7 planets is identical with the candlestick symbolism of the menorah, with the sun in the center as the main stem and the 3 planets on either side. So prior to the reclaiming of the temple by the Maccabeans, prior to that, the menorah had 7 candles burning, the central one and 3 on each side. And after the reclaiming of the temple and the 8 days it took to consecrate the new oil, the menorah was changed to 8 stems to honor the 8 days that the light burned while waiting for the new oil to be prepared. So this original menorah, the ancient menorah, was a sevenfold menorah, which echoes the days of the week and the seven, what we call classical planets. All of those planets that can be seen with the naked eye. And I think I'm going to have to just skip on. I'm going to say one comment from De Musica Mundana. So there's a man named Flood who authored this book, and he has a chart that shows the theory of universal music. And the interval between the element of earth and the highest heaven is considered a double octave. And it signifies that the highest heaven, the sun, and the earth have the same time. So they are the lower tone is the earth, the sun is an octave above, and the celestial mundane sun is the highest of all, the second octave up. And he goes on then to delineate various aspects of the planets at various stages in this double octave system. And so these are all things that we'll be exploring further when we're together. And I attempted to whet your appetite as to some of the mysteries of the sun and creation, and some of the mysteries of music and the relationship of how music could be known as an art, a liberal art that is related to the sun. And I'd just like to end with a quote from Mozart, where he said, "The wonders of the music of the future will be of a higher and wider scale, and will introduce many sounds that the human ear is now incapable of hearing. Among these new sounds will be the glorious music of angelic chorales. As men hear these, they will cease to consider angels as a figment of their imaginations." So this opens a door for us to have a conversation about the music of the spheres and what is possible in the future. So thank you very much. And I would like to see if anyone has questions or comments that you'd like to make. I guess you raise your hand, or yeah, I guess, I don't know if Dan can see you. Or do you push a number on the keypad, Dan?
If you would like to make a comment or ask a question, hover your mouse over the top part of your Zoom window and you'll see a hand. You can raise your hand and I will bring your picture into the window with everybody else's picture. So just reach up to the top of the Zoom window and click the hand. Oh, Karen, there's currently no hands raised.
Okay. So if there are no comments or questions, Gary, do you have anything you would like to say, or Andrew, before we ask Apila to do our closing invocation?
Yeah, Karen, I'll just make a quick comment. First, just to thank you for a tour de force of the complexity of the cosmic order. And to just make a final note, to say that, you know, in and through all the layers and octaves and hidden suns and visible suns and everything that we've heard from Karen over the last half hour, there's just one central thematic that applies to musica, and that is that we're dealing, as Pythagoras said, with emptiness. And the frequencies of the invisible world as they make themselves manifest in the visible world through simply their frequencies, either tonally or mathematically. And I want to just raise this note because this is going to be a theme that I'll be raising with regards to Pythagoras. It's just worth noting that in all the traditions about Pythagoras, he went to the East and he was a contemporary of the Buddha. And it was the great insight of the Buddha that of anatta, of the non-self. You know, we think of our physical bodies and we think we're corporeal, but it was, you know, all this insight into the frequencies and the spheres and the layers all have to do with that. When you penetrate into your physical manifestation down to the subatomic level, there's no there. There's actually nothing there but frequencies. So you can imagine looking at the universe from the inside out. That's what Karen's been doing. We're used to looking at the universe from the outside, the physical level, sort of in. But if you just go to the opposite and realize that there's no there in the middle of the atoms, of the atomic structure, it's all invisible frequencies and sounds, and you look at the manifest world from the inside out, then you get the logic and the beauty of what Karen just laid out. So I just wanted to offer that as a matter of perspective. And if you start with the invisible and deduct the visible, what she said just makes a lot of sense. So, but don't try to memorize it all. So, but beautiful, Karen. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for that, Jim. Yes, it is definitely the Platonic point of view that Pythagoras was also speaking of, starting with the divine essence coming down into manifestation. And we also know that we are nothing more than light beings. That's all we are, is light that's been densified. And light and tone, every light has a tonal frequency. So we are also our own tone. So I very much look forward to exploring all of this together. And thank you, Jim, for saying that. Yeah. So, Apila, would you be kind enough to say a closing prayer for us today?
I will, thank you. Once again, lighting the flame and the cedar from Chartres. We give thanks today for the gift of the circle, for the synchronicities and the complementarian nature of the words spoken and the ideas explored. Thank you again for this life. Amen.
Thank you. And is it possible to open everyone's mic so we can all say goodbye?
We are not able to do that on this platform.
Oh, okay. Well, we're all going to pretend we can hear each other because it's delightful to hear everybody's voices.
Hi, everyone.
So thank you for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful month. And our next call is on March 10th, and Andrew will be our featured speaker next month. So look forward to Andrew next month and to all of you being with us. All right. Wonderful. Bye-bye.